So who wants to start?
Well, would you maybe I'd ask you guys if you want to lay out for us. Are there things you're doing this year that are different from what you did last summer?
Well, we really are just doubling down on what we did last summer, and really expanding how we think about our all-of-government approach to addressing violent crime and making sure our residents feel confident that the City of Cleveland is focused on reducing violent crime in the summer months. As you know, the theory of change is really simple. There's a small portion of our city that's responsible for a majority of violent crime. And so we've identified those hot spots, and we're going to be doing neighborhood walks in those hot spots. We'll have targeted law enforcement in those hot spots, but we'll also have every department at City Hall playing a role to address issues, quality of life issues in those hot spots. So everything from building and housing, beefing up code inspections, to public works, installing speed tables in those hotspots and fixing potholes and making sure we're mowing vacant lots and getting rid of illegal dumping sites, to targeted traffic enforcement details in those hotspots as well too. I think the other thing that's important to note is we want to make sure that young people in our city are productive and busy this summer. So we had great success last year with our summer soundtrack program in partnership with CMSD. We'll be doing that again this summer. There are 3 tracks for young people to get involved. Summer school at CMSD through their summer immersion program. We also have jobs available with Youth Opportunities Unlimited. And then we have free programming in all of our rec centers across the city. And then unlike last summer, we now have our brand new 311 portal available on our open data portal website for residents to field their complaints about groundhogs or graffiti or trash pickup in various languages. And as we do our neighborhood walks this summer, we'll be using iPads to log complaints from residents and addressing those concerns in real time. Chief, anything you want to add?
So what we saw last year with our enforcement efforts was really positive. We saw the outcome at the end of the summer that there was a reduction in violent crime. So we are working from that, and we're continuing on the plan that we had from last year. We're keeping our partnerships with the State Highway Patrol for our traffic initiatives, our partnerships with the FBI, DEA, U.S. Marshals, and all our other state and local partners. We find that these are productive and they are felt in the streets. And we are also asking for the community to be our partner. We need the community, we need the information that they're seeing. We need them to call and let us know what's happening in their neighborhood. If a crime does occur in their neighborhood, to report what they see or what they're hearing. Everything we get from the community is impactful for the safety of our residents.
You mentioned the partnerships. I was wondering, given the recent administration, you've talked about difficulties in partnerships on the federal level. Do you foresee that affecting anything as it comes to public safety?
Nothing on the law enforcement side. We have a really good partnership with the U.S. Marshal and U.S. Attorney, a great relationship with Governor DeWine and his head of public safety at the state. And these partnerships have been very effective. We really deepened these partnerships after we had the mass shooting in July of 2023. And we partner with the Marshals, FBI, DEA, and a host of other federal and state and local law enforcement on our violent crime task force reduction details and our quarterly warrant sweeps as well. And so all those things are not in jeopardy right now with the new administration in Washington, D.C.
I have a question. I track the homicides very carefully. And homicides have been down 40% for a very long time. When I reach out to your office, I hear, we contributed to the RISE program, we do this. I think that's really important. I would like a more defined answer from you two about a reduction in homicides.
Yeah, law enforcement certainly, I think, has played a role in the reduction of homicides. I think a couple of examples where I think some tactical things we've done as a city have helped us reduce violent crime and reduce homicides. I think number one, the fact that we are now doing quarterly warrant sweeps where we are targeting the repeat trigger pullers and the folks likely to commit repeat violent offenses has allowed us to really make sure we're targeting those who are committing these heinous offenses in our neighborhood. I think secondly, the launch of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center has also played a major role. We've been able to stop the flow of hundreds of illegal guns coming into the city of Cleveland because of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center. And that center gives us a lot of data and intelligence through informants on where illegal crime guns are coming from, who's responsible for them, how do we track them, and because of a technology called NIBIN, we can now trace where guns are coming from and how many incidences of violent crime a gun was involved in. So in one case several summers ago, one gun was responsible for over 14 shootings. And so all these new tools and these partnerships, I think, have allowed us to put more resources to bear, which has allowed us to reduce the homicide rate. Chief, you want to add to that?
Also, if you notice our homicide solve rate, is, it fluctuates, but it's on average around 70%. And what that does is it gets that shooter off the street right away. What we are finding in years past was a lot of retaliation.
Yeah.
So when you have a shooter that's still out there, retaliations and more shootings continue to happen. But having someone in custody, it takes the person responsible off the street, and it helps reduce that number of homicides that occur.
I have, sorry.
And one more thing I want to add to that. I would say we have an amazing street outreach team in the Department of Community Relations. And they are building relationships in neighborhoods. They are trusted in neighborhoods. That's getting us more information about where crime is occurring, who's committing the crime, how do we get them more resources. So I think that has also played a role in the reduction of homicides and violent crime in the city as well too.
Relating to the homicide solve rate, I think you mentioned in State of the City something like 94% or something this year when I followed up.
Yeah.
And I just want to know how you guys have made that happen. That seems like a very,
and
very
it does
high
fluctuate
number.
based
Sure.
on the number of homicides and open cases. But
So
Chief, want to talk about
if you
that?
look at our real-time crime center, we have dedicated analysts that are sitting there watching the computer screens, and they give real-time information to the detectives and the officers. So they are, the city cameras that are throughout this, they are able to capture a lot of what is occurring and tell them what vehicle was involved, a suspect description. So that really contributes to the solve rates with our homicides. License plate readers that we have on all our vehicles, the flock cameras that are out there. We have all the technology is a huge part in the solve rates for the homicide. We have great homicide detectives as well.
I think one thing that caught people by surprise last year were the street takeovers. Have you changed your approach this year? Did you learn anything from last year that you're going to apply this year?
So I want to define those really quick.
Sure.
So there are takeovers and there are meetups. So we did have a takeover that occurred in September of last year. And what we had from that was we've arrested a lot of people on very high level violent crimes. What we see, and that, as you know, people came from all over, from Cincinnati, out of state for that event. What we see in our neighborhoods are car meetups. There's a big difference in the two. Car meetups are just people who are going to meet up. It's a social thing. They go up, they show their cars, they spin their tires. They're not taking over the city, the streets, or impacting residents, but they are causing a disturbance. So there's a clear difference in the two types of activity. And we still have our street takeover task force, as well as a group of officers that we have assigned to address the car meetups and any potential car takeovers.
And we're going to be very aggressive that this nuisance, problematic behavior is not acceptable in the city of Cleveland. And as we saw with the arrest from the street takeover in September of last year, we use the full weight of the law to hold those accountable. And we'll do the same thing if those happen this summer as well.
Are you saying though that you treat the meetups and the takeovers differently?
We don't treat them differently,
Okay.
but it's a different type of response that we get from those who are in it. The takeover that occurred was complete lawlessness. What we see with the meetups is when the officers are responding out, they're dispersing. As soon as, we have our real-time crime center monitoring these areas, our officers give the special attention When they see that activity, they go in there with their lights, they break up the group leaves. We didn't have that with the takeover. So there's a clear defined difference between the activity, but they are treated the same.
Chief, do you know how many number of arrests that you guys made from that September takeover?
So we had 17 arrests from that, and they were all for the felony charges.
What about staffing concerns? I know that you have worked to try to reverse that trend, but constantly we're hearing from city council, from residents, we want more police. Where are we at right now, and what will it look like this summer?
Well, we are delivering on that commitment to hire more police in the city of Cleveland. Right now, we have over 90 recruits in the police academy, with more on the way for a class starting this August. Last year, we brought on 134 new recruits to the Division of Police, the most in 5 years since 2019. And because of the historic investments we've made in boosting police pay, raising the age to join the department, streamlining the hiring process from 18 months to 4 months, there's been a big increase in the attention and the interest into the Cleveland Division of Police. Attrition has actually declined by 42% since 2022. And less people are leaving, more are staying.
And we have more coming back.
And more coming back from various suburban departments because they want to work in this police department because the culture has changed. We have a great chief, and the benefits are a lot better than many of our peer cities across the region.
Quick follow-up on that, just because Chief Todd, I know that we've talked about the consent decree and the City Club Forum, and as you talk about the culture changing, we are looking at, the Trump administration wants to end consent decrees, and police accountability seems to maybe be less of a priority or going to the wayside a little bit. What is your response to that, to the consent decree possibly ending, and how to uphold that changed culture?
Well, I have to give the chief and the command staff and Dr. Anderson a lot of credit because over the last 3 years, I think we made dramatic strides in our pathway to becoming compliant with the consent decree. It's been a long 10 years being under the oversight of the Department of Justice. We've had over nearly 60 upgrades over the last 3 years. So regardless of what the Trump administration decides to do, we are going to continue our progress around reforming the police department. And if the decree goes away under the Trump administration, it is my mandate to codify Dr. Anderson's role inside City Hall with the support, hopefully, of City Council, and to make sure we sustain the progress and sustain those reforms over time. And so I don't care what happens in DC. I know I have a commitment to the residents of Cleveland to make sure we sustain the progress that we made over the last 10 years, and we're going to work through what that looks like in the future.
And what would her role be?
So right now, the Office of Police Accountability is not codified with City Council. And so we're exploring with City Council what's the best way to codify her office, but also how do we take a long-term look at all of these oversight agencies to make sure they're streamlined and that we have a pragmatic regulatory framework for police accountability that has common sense, that makes sense, and that it doesn't undermine the ability of the chief to do her job leading the Division of Police.
Thank you.
Chief, how many police officers are on staff right now?
Right now, we have 1,238.
1238, and we're budgeted for how many?
1,350.
1350.
Is that including recruits?
Yes. And we have another class that will be seated in August.
How many are eligible to retire?
I'd have to get that number for you. So we're hitting an interesting gap right now. So there was a large influx of hiring up until about 2001, and then there was a hiring freeze after the layoffs. So we're right at that point now where you're going to see a lot of officers who are not eligible to retire because of that hiring freeze.
Have you guys came to an agreement with the sheriff's office about patrolling downtown this summer?
Well, I got a commitment from the county executive that he wants to continue the downtown safety patrol with the sheriff department. As I said in my State of the City of Cleveland is still a part of Cuyahoga County. We are the largest tax base in the county, the largest job base in the county. So without a safe Cleveland, you don't have a safe region. and I'll accept help from anybody, whether it be the county, the state, federal law enforcement that supports our vision for public safety, and I'm grateful for their support and partnership.
Now, some of the people on county council want you to pay up for that service. Are you considering paying into this?
Not at this time. I think the county executive and the sheriff recognize the importance of the county supporting us on keeping downtown safe, and I know we're grateful for the support and partnership. And you know, we all have a role to play to keep our city safe and secure, and I'm just grateful that the county is supporting us on that.
Another element of that is, would you have an MOU with the sheriff so that they would follow the provisions of the consent decree? I know I think there was another shooting recently involving a sheriff's deputy. Is that something that you're thinking about?
So because they have the jurisdiction to operate throughout the city, they're not required an MOU or to follow the policies of the Division of Police.
So it sounds like, is there any leverage you have there to, ask them to follow your procedures?
I can just tell you that the Division of Police, we are committed to constitutional policing, and the policies we have in place are effective, and we will continue to, do the work that we've already started.
The Neighborhood Safety Fund,
Yeah.
Where are we at with that? I know I did like a follow-up kind of recently.
Well, later this month, I'll be reviewing grants to go out for the Neighborhood Safety Fund, our third allocation of those dollars. And those dollars are really important, especially now as we're seeing some of the federal cuts from the DOJ with some of our community violence intervention work. They fund programs like the Peacemakers Alliance, Icons, Beat the Streets, programs that do a fantastic job of keeping young folks off the street in the summer months. So really grateful that we had the foresight 3 years ago to put money aside so we could fund these critical community-based efforts to reduce violent crime.
And is there like a measure of, it's hard because it's an intangible thing, right? You don't know if someone is going to turn to violence, but how are you measuring success with that program?
Well, I think the number of people they touch is important. The number of conflicts they help de-escalate is also an important metric. Having them build community trust and relationships is also a key part of what we look at. And then our ability to raise the capacity of these violence interrupter programs is also a key thing that we take a look at. But in the hotspots, we're deploying them in those hotspots. And so when we see reductions of violent crime, we know that they played a role in helping us get those numbers down.
Violence interrupters, Peacemakers lost their federal money for their hospital program. Is the city thinking about backfilling that, or where do you see support going?
Not at this stage.
Yeah.
I know I have to talk to Maisha here relatively soon, but we want to support them in however we can in getting other philanthropic dollars to backfill those funds. But it's really just frustrating to see the DOJ turn their back on programs like the Peacemakers Alliance, who do amazing work in our hospitals to de-escalate conflicts that may happen in a hospital when there's a tragedy around gun violence. And so we as a community have to find a way to support them in this challenging time.
2 minutes.
Okay, going back to the consent decree, sorry.
Yeah.
In the state of the city, if the Trump administration isn't able to get rid of it, and it's up to Judge Oliver ultimately, in your state of the city, you said that the monitoring team keeps moving the goalposts.
That's true.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we don't have any clear methodology on what compliance looks like is challenging and a bit frustrating for myself and the chief and Dr. Anderson and her team. And so it's important that the DOJ with the monitor give us a clear framework and a clear methodology on what compliance looks like. So we know how to get compliant and how to hold everybody at City Hall accountable to make sure we get compliant so we can get out of the consent decree in a reasonable time frame.
And then you said you envision us getting out of it in the next 2 to 3 years. What were you basing that on?
Well, just the consultation I've got from Dr. Anderson and the fact that we've been able to see nearly 60 upgrades over the last 3 years. I think she's done a really good job of herding all the cats and dogs at City Hall. I mean, folks don't realize this, but the consent decree is more than just a police department. You have various departments involved around the consent decree. And before we took office, we really didn't have visibility on an all-of-government approach to get compliant. And so now, under Dr. Anderson's leadership, we have that vision. But it's important that we have a monitor who also shares that vision and gives us a clear timeline and a clear sense of what compliance looks like so we can meet the goal and get back to running the ship here by ourselves at the Division of Police and here at City Hall.
What do you hear from residents about, like, do you hear that they think that they're ready for the consent decree to be over, or what?
The only thing I hear from residents is, number one, they want more police. They want increased police visibility. They want the police to show up on time when we call, and they want constitutionally appropriate policing. And those are the mandates that we try to deliver on every single day. Great.
One more thing, has ICE asked for the city's cooperation in any immigration enforcement?
Nothing.
No.
Really? Okay.
That's it.
They get that.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate it.